Recording in progress.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for attending this final session of our inaugural Cannabis and Sports Conference in 2022. And on this particular panel, which we've labeled Trending in 2022, a novel panel discussion, we have a host of individuals from a variety of backgrounds and interests in the space of cannabis. And so what I'd like to do is ask each of you, if you don't mind, to simply start out with a little bio about yourselves. Tell us who you are, and like we've talked about all weekend, everybody has a story. How did you didn't wake up or start your career into the space? How did you evolve into the space, and what do you do now, and the impact that you have? So let's start on the far end. Ron, would you mind going first?
Sure. It's an honor to be here. Thank you very much. Been looking forward to this conference for a long time. Think this is potentially a game changer. So again, it's an honor to be here. My name is Ron Watson. I am president of Watson Strategies. When anybody asks me what I do for a living, I look them straight in the face and I say I'm a scumbag lobbyist. That's what I do for a living. So I have a whole bunch of other clients in healthcare. But back in 2014, I quit my well-paying job so I could start talking about cannabis for children. Unfortunately, we lost our child after a brave 14-month battle to leukemia at 8.5 years old. So the why is very personal to me. We all have our personal stories, but I basically gave up a long lobbying career so I could go out and talk about cannabis for children, put my firm together. Longer story short, help put the team together that ended up getting one of the licenses. So MOVE is the company that I work with. I'm also their director of governmental relations, and I do some outreach or sales work for them in the Panhandle area.
Thank you. Dr. Ferrari?
Hi, my name is Dr. Anthony Ferrari. I have my PhD in analytical chemistry. I graduated from Florida State University in 2015, and then I moved over to Colorado, where cannabis and essential oil work was what I was doing mostly. And I started by just doing like the analytical techniques, basically like how to test it, how to figure out where the testing was lacking, basically, and try to provide a need in that space. But as I started going, I started to see all the clinical outcomes related to CBD and stuff like that, and pursued it as a career. It was like, I'm just gonna do the CBD thing now. And moved to Florida with my wife. She's getting her PhD right now in neuroscience, so I needed to find a job. So I found a Florida group that was doing CBD, and at the time they only had 12 locations. I joined the company. We've ballooned up to 450 franchise locations across the country. And doing that, I did a lot of formulation, so a lot of minor cannabinoid focused formulations with synergistic natural ingredients. And from there, I've kind of pivoted now to doing more research stuff, so more clinical outcomes with university studies. So that's really my passion, is publishing. In graduate school in chemistry, you're trained to just like make an experiment and publish. So I feel like I can kind of do that for hemp-based products and try to find clinical outcomes in that way. So,
Thank you. Mike?
Mike James, former NFL athlete, played in the NFL for 6 years. During that career, I had a dependency on opiates, and that moved me into the cannabis space, where I filled out a TUE. I was the first professional athlete to fill out a therapeutic use of exemption for medical cannabis. That propelled me more into the cannabis forefront with Dr. Sue Cicely and lobbying and so on and so forth. And now I'm the vice president of Lion Order by Rohan Marley, a roots luxury cannabis brand. And we're based out of Michigan, and we're doing really well. And now I'm just doing everything I can to help athletes further their lives after playing ball, because it's been something that's been near and dear to my heart, and something that I know Ro and the rest of the team of Lion Order is something that they really want to change when it comes to the athletic spectrum and how medicine is presented.
Excellent. So you can see we have diverse experience and backgrounds. I'm most scared about Dr. Ferrari's child growing up in a house with 2 PhDs is what kind of toys a child has. But that's diverting.
he likes brooms right now.
Yes. And are we able to bring in Jordan virtually to introduce himself?
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? Good morning from the West Coast. This is Jordan Webster. I'm a co-founder of GroundUp Youth Academy. It's an organization. We've been doing this for about 20 years, moving children, kind of empowers youth to outside communities to further their endeavors, whether it be athletically, entertainment-wise, anything that kind of been a skill. But the main focus has been basketball and football mainly. And so, excuse me, I just think that cannabis has played such a major part in athletic, based upon their anxieties, based upon past life, and based upon the present life that they were living currently as an athlete. So just the work ethic, just the mental support, just the healing from the salves to the everything that's been really changing the game for these young guys. And I just think that I'm a big advocate for it, for myself and others. And, you know, I'm just glad to be a part of this and just really to learn as well and share, I guess, a little bit of my experiences with the youth. And, you know, just I appreciate you guys.
Thank you, Jordan. So, you know where I want to start is when you dive into a topic like this, and as we hope to become more specialized in putting this type of a conference on, cannabis becomes more of a generic word as one. And so we've heard all the presentations in the last few days about the various cannabinoids and the functions and all. I'd like to start with a little discussion on, Mike, you come from, I'm guessing, more supportive from the THC side when you're seeking that exemption, and Tony, you come from non-THC products. Tell us about why you believe one approach is better than the other, or maybe you don't. Maybe you both agree with each other, you just happen to advocate for one versus the other.
I know for me, it's not more THC than CBD. It's more full spectrum. You know, I try to, like Dr. Specifically taught me, you know, to be able to use the whole plant. You know, the whole plant is important. You know, she feels like, and she's taught me that, you know, you can't have one without the other. You know what I'm saying? So for me, it's more of a full spectrum thing. You know, but I'm definitely when it comes down to THC, it definitely helps me a lot, you know, in the things that I've dealt with when retiring and anxiety and so on and so forth. So, you know, as a patient, I lean more towards THC, but, you know, speaking and my understanding, I do agree with the whole plant, you know, a whole plant basis. You know?
Great, thank you. Tony?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of am in the same boat of like, either is worth advocating for at this point. I think a lot of early lobbying stuff that we did was like working with marijuana groups in Florida. So to me, it's all the same team until we have to start to sit down and really get specific about our differences. But to me, I think you get, for me, I think of the recreational marijuana market more as like an organic chemist would, where you only have access to carbon or oxygen or things like that. And that's because they only really focus on THC cultivation and getting that ingredient dialed in and the terpene concentration dialed in. As an inorganic chemist, that was my background, you basically get access to the entire periodic table. So that's where my head is usually at. Like all the 108 other cannabinoids, there ought to be utility there that you could give to a child or something like that, where you wouldn't have psychoactive negative effects or something like that. But it's not to say that that isn't also a completely valid way to go about it right now with THC products. Like I've seen Dr. Sue Sicily and Dr. Goldstein speak on THC with children, so I've seen great outcomes that way too. So it's not to exclude that audience. I just think you might be able to get a lot accomplished without THC, so you ought to explore that in some cases. So, but I think we're all on the same team, basically.
So while we have you here, I want to ask you a quick question. I want to put this to bed. How many cannabinoids are there? Because in every presentation I've seen, it's been a different number, greater than 40, greater than 100, greater than 120.
Yeah.
What's the answer?
Right now, identified, there's like 108 that are identified.
108.
But you can easily imagine that that number is just not right. So,
All right, so he gave me the same answer.
it's going to be a
everyone else
moving
gave me.
scale. It's going to increase. And then a lot of them are inactive. But when you run it on an HPLC or a mass spec, you can see every little hump is a peak, is a cannabinoid, and you can see them all over. When you extract like a true full spec, like whole plant extraction, you can see a crap ton of cannabinoids.
Okay, so the new answer is there's a crap ton
Yes.
of cannabinoids.
That is probably more accurate than a number.
Ron, did you want to chime in on that?
I just love the scientific term crap ton. That's
Yeah.
just, I wrote that down. Honestly, I think the debate is access. So it's the law. How is the law treating the plant? So unfortunately, depending upon where you live, you may only be able to speak for part of the plant. And so that's the kind of way I look at it. It's access and it's education. So I think we would all be talking about the whole plant if the entire country allowed us to do so. So to me, I always come at things from the governmental regulatory side. And again, I think it's what's your state structures and laws, and then unfortunately, that's all that you're allowed to talk about.
Jordan, how many do you think exist? You're on mute.
I like the 108, though. That was very specific. So when I heard him say that, too, I thought, ooh, maybe that is the number.
That's like the latest study showed that.
From what I'm hearing, it's a crap ton. Yeah. So I'll go with his answer. Piggyback off him. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I mean, I haven't. I'm not very versed in that category. I'm just versed in life and the athletes. I've been raising athletes for over 20 years. I've taken children from every aspect of the country, every state, every city, from New York to Atlanta to Chicago to California, any state, Texas. I'm from Louisiana, and I just been noticing that the youth just not prepared for life, man, and there's so much anxiety, there's so much post-traumatic stress from just being in neighborhoods that they come from uneducated situations. So I just think that I'm not very versed on as far as cannabinoids, but I'm versed on life. And I just think that if we can find a way early to educate, I've taken kids at 18 versus taking children at 12, 13. It was a difference between creating the #1 draft pick in the NBA versus creating a junior college kid who had to take a harder road or had to get more tutoring or different things that we can capitalize on early in life. So I just think that if we find a way to unite everyone and bring all the knowledge, because some things that I might have, another person might not bring to the table as well. So I just think that if we find a way to as a unit, move as one, I think it'll be a lot of success in this. I can't say that much more. I think that the unity is the key right now. From everyone's aspect and everyone's knowledge and their track record.
So you bring another aspect to this, and that's from the standpoint of, for example, being a life coach. And so I want to put on the table here the question that Ron asked at the end of the last session, which is the topic of NIL. Anybody here not know what NIL is? We can explain that. It's by title, it's name, image, and likeness. And it has to do with NCAA athletes having the ability to receive money, endorse products, things of that like, get paid while they're a university athlete, which in the past was completely not allowed, and in fact led to penalties on behalf of the university. So you may have heard the history of boosters need to stay out of this. They can't be involved in the recruiting process to bring people to somewhere like Miami. That doesn't happen though, but
No, about a book.
no, I don't mean to call you guys out. But what's happened now is, and this went up to the Supreme Court, and they ruled that the athletes have a right to benefit from their name, their image, and their likeness. That's allowing a university athletic program to benefit from. So the question number one was, how does, say, cannabis fit into this? And so the simple answer to start with is that anything that's on an NCAA banned list will not be an endorsable component. Now, you'll see there are places where you'll see alcohol science, because alcohol is not on the banned list per se, right? Steve talked about that previously. But cannabinoids are. So as of this point in time, the universities, their athletic administration, their legal councils are not going to allow this. But let me tell you what, as you saw the trend of what's happening, arguably you can predict in the very near future, the next step that you'll hear from NCAA is, and this is me, I don't have my disclosure slide up here, right? I'm only speaking on my behalf here. Maybe they'll still keep THC on a banned list a little longer, but you're gonna see the other kind of minor cannabinoids and others off the list. Now that's gonna open up the floodgates. And here's my question. Forget about the athletes at the university who can become a product endorser for SunMed and your CBD stores. What about the high school senior or junior who's now being recruited? And in the recruiting war, individuals who are partnering between their company and their university are helping this student athlete decide which college to go play based on the NIL agreement that they have. So I want to start with you, Mike, because this didn't exist when you're in high school. No. What an opportunity.
Right.
What are your thoughts on this? How will this change the landscape, and how do you suggest and advise first maybe CBD company or hemp companies get involved, and then potentially down the road, do you see athletes partnering up with something like your brand?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely do see it down the road. I mean, just like with any other thing, partnerships, you know, they can be done, and the athlete will be paid. And now what I do think when you're talking about a high school senior, and like my man spoke about earlier, I mean, the people around them and that athlete has to be very conscious of what's going on, because now we didn't have that ability to sign a contract like that coming out of high school, you know, a multi-million-dollar contract, or even for a few $100,000, you know. So that ability, you have to be very conscious of what's going on and understand that even though this is a CBD company, it's still business at the end of the day. There's still things that need to be done and so on and so forth in there. And there are things that need to be protected from the athlete standpoint and from the, you know, from the company standpoint. Now, when it comes down to them coming together and moving forward, I think there definitely is going to have to be like more than just the marketing of CBD. It has to be, or THC, it has to be like a wellness program. It has to be some around this athlete to show the public, or to create a better stigma around the athlete going into it. Like we spoke about earlier, you have to kind of only deal with what they're allowing you to deal with. So CBD is going to be what you're allowed to deal with, and the only way it's going to change into bigger deals, or the athlete's going to have an opportunity to capitalize on that deal, is I think it's going to have to be a wellness program around it, you know, and not just it being a CBD marketing opportunity, you know. Like, it's something that is showing why an athlete, you know, is taking this CBD and partnering with this company and so on and so forth, and not just it being another NIL.
These are great points. So to give you an example of what happens right now, you might have an athlete at a university, and maybe they're not tremendously well known, but the brand identified them as someone who would represent their brand well, and or they have a large following on Instagram or somewhere else on TikTok. And so a company might say, you know, we're going to give you $3,000 a month paycheck as long as you, at least on 2 occasions, tweet out TikTok. Is TikTok out the word? I don't know. Yeah. But as long as you promote, you're wearing our sneakers when you're walking out of the dorm, or you're going to class, and you promote this for us. And this is an automatic paycheck. That this is happening right now. Now that's a small number compared to what others get if they're starting QB and identifiable and have more TV presence and newspaper writings and things of that nature. And so it is a game, and some universities have curtailed this game and created a system to help protect the athletes, to vet the companies that come to them. But I don't know that they're prepared to vet individuals in the cannabis industry. So first, a question for Tony. And you don't have to tell us your trade secrets, but this is coming. right? How do you approach this? How do you decide, do you want a clean-cut All-American kid? What are you looking for a person to partner with you?
Yeah, I mean, we've actually talked about this quite a bit recently with our marketing team and stuff, and it's kind of what Mike is alluding to is it doesn't make sense unless the athlete uses it for a purpose and can talk about it actually on their social media or whatever. So like, we're not going to put something in some QB's hands just because they're like, going to go number one or whatever. Like, that doesn't actually have as much value as you would think. The CBD and hemp industry, at least from my perspective, is all about outcomes. And if you can show an outcome, like let's say you had an athlete that had seizure problems and they're taking a water-soluble CBD product and now they're, they have very low rates of seizures. At that point, that's a much more compelling, that'll get picked up by a press release or something like that in the cannabis sort of circle. And that's kind of where we operate right now. We're not looking to compete with Budweiser or large, alcohol manufacturers or even larger brands that can dump millions of dollars. We're still a local-ish business where we don't have a large amount of shareholders telling us, drop 100 million on this, endeavor. It's more like we have to be very careful about who we vet and why we vet them, and we want them to be able to actually use the stuff and talk about why it's helping them with sleep or whatever they're using it for.
And that's one of the reasons why Tony is here, because he's not just a smart inorganic chemist, is that what it is? He represents a company that does things for all the right reasons, and I have a lot of respect for that. Jordan, you alluded to that this might be a space that you're in to help with these young kids to make these decisions. So I guess my question for you is, not being a lawyer, how do you provide sound advice to them, and what cut will you take?
Well,
Yeah, that's another
it's,
real
it's
question.
I've been working on that for quite some time now. Right now, I currently have one of my young athletes. I moved him from Chicago. His name is Brandon McCoy. He's McDonald's All-American, Jordan Brand All-American, Baller's Life MVP. He has every accolade, USA 19 and under team. I mean, he's a bronze medalist. I mean, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on. He plays 6 instruments. He's 7'1". I mean, he's probably the most marketable young fella I've ever encountered. It was unfortunate last year, maybe in like December, he had an ACL, MCL injury. He tore his right ACL, MCL. And so he's been on a road to recovery. And on this road to recovery, I just had been thinking the whole time, just been gathering content, just been kind of trying to display that we've been putting CBD on his knees, different little things to kind of show progress and the outcome, rather, like brother had mentioned. You know what I mean? So I just think it's all about results. And over the past probably 3 months, I've watched his knee go from barely walking to, I mean, he's back in the gym, running on the beach every day, jumping, running, I mean, playing in leagues again. And the doctor that I've been working with down in Manhattan Beach, Dr. Fader, I mean, he's just been working wonders. I hadn't been telling him I've been using the CBD and different things and different salves, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, just bath bombs, just anything that I can try to give him that wasn't maybe inhalable, but there's no THC involved currently right now. But I just think it's been working wonders on him. And I have another athlete that I've been working with for quite some time now. His name is Willie Cauley-Stein. Last year, he kind of got some off the court issues in the league with opioids and a little THC. And he's been on a road to recovery. I wanted to bring him to the session, to this conference, but those guys are great examples of what we can do. I heard Mr. James just earlier mention of his past, and I just think it's just all kind of information. It goes back to kind of unifying everyone and making everyone understand what we represent. So I just think those guys ultimately can pave the way for the rest of the guys. I mean, they were lottery picks, et cetera, et cetera. And I just think it's about results and what we can do with them, because, I mean, they wouldn't be probably taking the opioid if they knew what the CBD can do for their body and different things. And like I said, it's going back from, we got to kind of do research on people's families and lives in order to kind of match them up with the school and the business that they're going to be promoting. You know what I mean? So I think ultimately it'll be a great thing. I think just being able to share all the information. I would love for the guys to share information on how they feel. And I just think everyone just needs to understand because no one really understands how it feels to be an athlete unless you're an athlete. You don't know how it feels to be a PhD unless you've taken the courses and done the research and had the results. So both don't even mainly know. I don't really know an NBA guy that's a PhD at the same time. So, but ultimately, that's what I see.
Thank you. And I knew you were going to dodge my part 2 question about your cut, but that's okay. We'll come back to that later. Ron, this was originally your question.
I just find the whole NIL fascinating as a sports fan. I love my Seminoles, and so I just find it intriguing as to how this is going to affect everything. But then over on top of that, representing one of the license holders here in Florida, my CBD friends here, they're allowed to advertise. They can take out billboards, they can run TV commercials, they can do all kind of things that we're prohibited from law and from doing. So back to how is the regulatory structure set up? I'm intrigued by NIL. My grandson told me about 6 months ago, I wear my Move stuff everywhere I go. I wear my hat, I wear my shirt, and he asked, do you ever leave the house without wearing something with Move on? And I laughed, and I said, no. You know why? Because it starts up conversations. Everywhere I go, when I have my shirt or my hat on, it starts up a cannabis conversation. How intriguing would that be if we could have athletes having those conversations start up? So it wouldn't necessarily have to be a part of the deal that they talk about their treatment and how it's recovered them, but it sure would be neat to have an athlete wearing one of my hats that somebody walked up to and then started saying, really, let's talk about this. So again, to me, I'm sure it's going to be a while before we can get there, but with my lack of advertising, I always try to do it with what I'm wearing, and I would love for some athletes to be able to do the same.
So what I've seen recently is it even goes farther than that. And what I've been advised at the athletics departments at the universities I visited is they said, well, just wake up each day and look around and you'll see all of them wearing new sneakers or a new shirt or a new something. That means one of them got the NIL and they got enough stuff to give to all their friends. That's how you know when a new deal was made. So it's not just you or the athlete who is wearing this. So this is a really good topic, and let me share with you all why. Because if you have enough knowledge in this industry, at some point there's a chance you will be asked by others how to vet a potential relationship. Because I'm guessing everybody here will agree there's some bad players in the industry. And if they're smooth talkers, you're going to lock yourself into something you might regret, as well as the universities. And that's where people really want to be careful. So I'd like to ask Mike and Tony, if you're advising people, what should they look for or look out for if they were going to cross paths with an athlete, a colleague, a department who has an opportunity to do an NIL with someone? What would excite you about working with that part as a partner, or what would make you run?
I mean, personally, there's different things. I like for there to be 100% honesty on both sides. So my advice would be to a young athlete, if they're working out an NIL deal with a new company, whether it's CBD or anything else, try to get, honest standpoints from that company, knowing what you need to do and what's allowed and what's not allowed. For me, like I said, honesty, straightforwardness, the ability, and it kind of falls into honesty, transparency, like the athlete will be able to know everything in the deal. You'll be able to be conscious of it and be able to go through a vetting process. The company will be able to get to know the athlete, because we spoke about earlier. It's also a risk for the company as well. These CBD companies, they don't have just tons of marketing dollars to, waste on an athlete who won't fulfill their contract. So it has to be, transparency and honesty on both sides. And I say if it's not that, then it's probably going to be a rocky road for the athlete and the company.
I want to come back to that, but let me hear you.
Yeah, I think it's pretty tough for me. Like, I'd basically seen the hemp industry grow quite a bit from like 2018, even that short amount of time. But a lot of hemp groups, they start with making a product or making something proprietary or doing something like that, and then they're just hyper focused that that's the only approach that matters. So they might have some crazy technology that's really absorbing, or something that you can't even see in lab tests or something like that, or we don't even test at all for it because it's so proprietary. We can't even tell the labs about it. Those are the immediate red flags. That's a group that's not really sold anything, and is thinking that they're gonna basically be almost like Silicon Valley, where don't really have a business model. You just create a product and then you sit and get an evaluation that inflates or something like that, based on the idea of sales. Those things are all over the hemp and cannabis industry, and those are terrifying to me. Anybody that you can't go in and test the product for what it is, then it's not really a hemp group. All of our stuff is out in the open. You could recreate and knock off our stuff. That's totally fine. But our whole thing is like we pump out millions of products, and we do it consistently, and we do it at a high level, and we do all these different formulations that feature different cannabinoids. So like that to me is a successful hemp group, at this point. But I think it does, the larger scale, the smaller scale, it doesn't really matter. I think if you're with an honest group, you can build that relationship, you can work as a team. I know something that when we talk to some of these groups, what they want is like custom formulation to an exact athlete specification. That's something that you should probably be able to do. You should be able to handle your supply chain all the way down to modifying terpenes or looking at different genetics and figuring out the right formulation for whatever thing you're trying to fit, because not everyone is going to be the same. So your products that work for the mass public, for 55 plus topicals that we sell a crap ton of, may not work for an extreme pain athlete. So you might need to go up on that. You might need to add in different cannabinoids. So I think all of those are important pieces to this conversation early.
But Tony, you alluded earlier to the type of athlete you would want to partner with, because they really believe in your product and they can tell the story. So what else would either of you do to vet people out, their backgrounds, their histories, to make you feel comfortable? Because I'm thinking, I use the term baggage, and I don't use it in a negative way. All of us have baggage. We come to the table with something, right? And I'm thinking that if you start looking at people's backgrounds, then you're not going to call Jordan, and he's doing the opposite. He's trying to help people with those challenging backgrounds find people like you. So what would make you run, like I said earlier, where I'm looking at this person's background and it's concerning to me? I'm willing to take a chance and help this person out moving forward, or it's too risky as a business. Like you said, Mike, we have limited dollars, and we have to make careful choices. So essentially, what's your psychological profile of somebody to say, this is the person we want versus not?
Yeah, I think it's going to be different, for every athlete and every company. I know for me, my man spoke about earlier, an athlete that's had a dependency on opiates. Him now marketing for a CBD company, using his story and the things he went through, I mean, it's a positive, you know what I'm saying? And that could be somewhat of a background that's looked at as not as, clean or pristine, but it's also something that's marketable, something that has helped him, and now he's changed his life around because of the product, or because of, what he's doing during this program, or so on and so forth. So, I mean, it's just about finding the right fit, and like I say, sometimes the past, it could be a past story where the world sees it as a negative. But this company with this certain product can turn into a positive, and that can be a win for the athlete and the company and, the country. To be able
Great
to,
answer.
have that.
Yeah, I think it's really been the onus on cannabis industry in general to break down stigmas like that. And we partnered with a PTSD veteran group that was 100% managed by veterans that had PTSD, and traditional business person or a legal counsel would be like, no, this is, bad management, like a bad red flag or something. But I think it's, like you said, everyone has baggage. We can all pretend like the CEOs are all, perfect and pristine that run these organizations, but, everyone has issues. You're just in a position with authority to make a decision. So a lot of like change and mental health stigma and stuff like that happens when you just like grab someone that is in need, that uses your product and has a following of people that are also in need or something like that. So like the PTSD veteran stuff was great. We had so many veterans, and people look at us like, wow, you took a chance on that? That was cool, So I don't think you have to have this perfect person. This is not the industry for that. We kind of respect people's issues and tolerate them in the cannabis space.
Tolerate's a good word too for our CEOs in most places, right? Ron, did you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think unfortunately for years, this has been viewed as a gateway drug, and I've always tried to make the argument that it's more of an exit ramp. And so strangely enough, I think these NIL deals could actually help highlight that. So your point was well taken, Mike. You know, some of these things in your past that were strikes before that may have prevented you from ever having success in the future could actually be utilized for a benefit to show I used to have a problem with this drug. It was given to me by my doctor. I became very addicted very quickly. Now, look at this natural substance I've replaced it with. I really think it's an opportunity to highlight what I call, it's not a gateway drug, it's an exit ramp, and we could do it hand-to-hand combat, one kid at a time.
Yeah.
And so to me, I think that's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree. I mean, you look at even what Ricky went through, Ricky Williams in the NFL, and even what I went through, you failed a lot of drug tests and you're demonized. And now you're using that same, past as a platform to now move cultures and to change stigmas and to help out others that you never thought you would, So
Mike, if you don't mind, this is a good segue into your story, because one of our last speakers, Mindy, spoke about TUEs, and though they may exist, it's different from sport to sport, and Steve talked about the issues with NCAA. It's not necessarily likely. So would you walk us through your experience in your application for this and what the outcomes were?
Yeah. So my rookie year, I was playing super well, starting, having a great season. I was playing the Dolphins on Monday night. I broke my ankle. First time I ever had surgery on anything in my life, and then I developed a dependency on opiates. Shortly after that, about a year and a half later, I started to use cannabis, and I weaned myself off of those opiates, and along with a wellness program. So it was not only cannabis, but
And who had knowledge of that within the medical organization? Was it known? Was it guided for you, or were you learning this on your own at the time?
Well, it was. I had a nutritionist. Thank God for Dr. Sue Sicily, Brian Maresco, my lawyer as well. But they were kind of guiding me through this wellness process, for the last few years of my career. And I kind of started using cannabis on my own. So it was kind of like one of those epiphanies. Like, look, I'm a child of substance abuse. NFL players are 4 times more likely than the general population to become dependent on an opiate. So, I kind of took it upon myself to say I needed to make a change. So I started using cannabis, which I never had done in my life. And a few years later, me, Dr. Sue Sicily, and her walking me through exactly what I was doing and me understanding exactly what I was doing. It wasn't only cannabis, it was like a wellness program. It was cognitive therapy, vestibular therapy, behavioral therapy. All these things played a part in me being able to do what I'm able to do today. Getting to my last year in Detroit, I had concussions, so I was out for the remainder of the year. These concussion symptoms were not going away; they were persistent. And, I didn't realize how many I had up to that point. So, me and the team, we had a few conversations, on what was the best options for me. For me, of course, going back to a pill form of medicine was going to be very difficult for me because I already had developed a dependency. So in the NFL, they have 2 options. It's, for chronic headaches and things like that, it's antidepressants, or you can go with a holistic therapy route, which is vestibular therapy, cognitive therapy, behavioral therapy, which what I was doing. But the only difference is I wanted to incorporate cannabis into that. And that was against the NFL's rules. It was on the banned substance list. So that caused us to have to go to, an arbitration, to have a conversation about this, try to figure out how can we move forward and maybe get cannabis. My whole thing was, can we just take it off the banned substance list? If it's removed, just like alcohol, then I will have an opportunity. I don't mind by going through the process. That's why I fill out a TUE, which was the same thing. You can get approved if you need to take Adderall or anything else that's on the banned substance list. You fill out a TUE. A doctor prescribe a prescription, says, hey, he's okay to take this, and you're cleared. So Dr. Sicily, she was my primary care physician, and she helped me fill out the TUE, so we put that in. The NFL denied it, but a year later, the policy changed to what it is now, and that's guys are only getting tested the first 2 weeks of camp, and the test is up to 150 nanograms a milliliter. I know you know what that means. But for the crowd, it's like if you go to Walgreens, you can get a test out of the, Walgreens, and it's 50 nanograms a milliliter. You know what I'm saying? So our test actually before that was 30 nanograms a milliliter. So it's actually harder to pass our test than it was like at a Walgreens regular drugstore, you know. So now it's 150, and now Lion Order and myself, we're looking to introduce a wellness program not only to the NFL but to various elite sports leagues where plant-based medicine is recognized, cognitive behavioral therapy, vestibular therapy, and so on and so forth. So that's what was my TUE process. It kind of propelled me into cannabis now. And, you know, I didn't know. I played in the league for 6 years. I didn't know about the TUE process until Dr. Sicily told me about it. And it's so crazy that I'm in an organization and I don't even know the options, you know. So that was the process. And now just trying to get a wellness program recognized so a guy doesn't have to go through this process again, you know, where there's another option besides opiates or antidepressants or so on and so forth. So.
Yeah, I commend you, because whenever you can make a change from an experience that you have that can help others in the future, that's really what we're all in this game for. Anybody have any questions out here as we open this up to the participants?
Nope.
Check, check. Okay. Good. I had a question. I know you're concentrating on athletes, and I get that. In the past, I had a sports business, a sports video business, and we concentrated on golf. And I know we had a lot of golfers who came to us who wanted to endorse our product, and obviously we worked with them. But we kind of had a policy of working with organizations and not working with individuals in that organization. We work with the individuals in the organization after we did a sponsorship with the organization, and I'll tell you exactly why. Because even though you have an athlete with the best intentions, what happens is you sign a contract with them, and if something happens in their personal life that really takes it to go sideways, it becomes a big problem. And I have to tell you, one of the people we were talking to was Tiger Woods, for example, who at the time we were talking to him had a sterling record, and then of course when he had his little ambiance with his wife, it became a problem. So we signed contract with like the Royal and Ancient, with PGA, with Bay Hill, for example. And then what happened was the pros that were associated with that then fell into line, and they would endorse it underneath that umbrella, which made it safer for us as a company to be able to do an endorsement that we knew would last for 5 or 10 years. And again, I'm not against individual athletes themselves. It just, as a company, I see that as a risk. I mean, I could see where I would get, and I'm an Oregon Ducks fan. I could see where, you know, somebody like SunMed would sign a deal with the Oregon Ducks, for example, and then of course the athletes underneath that fall into this NIL program. I think that's a safer approach. And my question is, does that make sense, or do you still want to go directly to the athletes?
Good. So yeah, your point is well taken. And if you take, for example, the cannabis industry aside, people can do that right now. That's what they do to pay for sponsorship, and they can put their labels and logos for as much money as they want to put all over the place. One of the things, and I certainly want your viewpoint on this, but we see with athletes is that in this business, many don't believe the organization is looking out for that. I think Mike just alluded to, he's in this league 6 years and wasn't aware of this. And maybe they're looking out for you today, but you're traded or let go tomorrow. So my experience has been the opposite. Now, I'm not here to sponsor something with a university per se, but what I found is in trying to work with the leagues in this space and helping educate, near impossible. However, if I work with players' unions, if I work with agents who represent the best of the players, and then even with players individually, I have a much greater rate of success and trust and a relationship building process. Now that's just my experience and viewpoint.
Yeah.
But
no, you hit it on the head. I mean, if the team brings me something, you're probably going to get a watered down version of me because the team's bringing me to it. You know, if it's something that my agent's bringing or something a deal that I'm doing on my own, you know, and you know that's the risk you take with anybody. I mean, me as an athlete, this company could have a PR scandal as well. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a risk on both sides. So, you know, with it, like you said, if teams bringing it to me, you're definitely going to get a team version. You're going to get the watered down version. You're going to get what the team expects. If it's something that maybe I can have equity or ownership in, you know, it's something that's going to, like Tom Brady with most of his things, you know what I'm saying? If I can have ownership in it, I think success rate is a lot higher. That's just from my experience. But
So-
I do understand as a company taking the safer route, but that also risk reward factor.
So you're paying an agent to look out for you. You're not paying a team
Yeah.
to look out for you.
Right, absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's a good point. I'm paying my agent to look out for me and to put my best interest forward, and I know the team's best interest is gonna come before my personal best interest.
As it should. That's their
Yeah,
business.
that's their business
right?
model. I mean, that's how they.
Like it or not.
Yeah.
When
That's
my
why-
favorite player gets traded away, it's the way it goes.
Yeah,
Right?
it is.
So Tony, you could, potentially become a sponsor, and you are with organizations. You want to talk
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, I mean, we sponsor the entire new professional pickleball league. Again, that's one of those things where they're new enough. We're a cannabis company. They're willing to take risks on things like that. We're talking to the Tampa Bay Rays right now. MLB has allowed sponsorships. Like, for example, for $10 million, you can get on the Rays jersey this year. So they're doing this new thing where they're putting logos on jerseys. And cannabis groups can't join if they're THC, but if you're CBD and you have NSF certification, which is basically them auditing your supply chain, you can get in on this. But I think that that's the traditional approach. I think the traditional approach would be, and the safer approach is exactly what you're saying, Mark, is to just grab the team. And I think what you do lose is the risk reward. And in this NCAA conversation, let's say that you grab an athlete that loves your products and then they become an NFL star. That risk reward, they'll probably be an advocate for you and your company because you were looking out for them when no one else was. So I think that's the risk reward that we're looking for. That's why we sponsor individuals. That's why we're targeting individuals. We also target ex-athletes. We retired golfers, tennis pros. I can't remember her name, but there's like a very famous tennis person that we sponsor right now. Maria Navratilova, is that her name? Okay. Yeah,
That
someone
will
like
be
that.
edited out, that part.
It's a ringing endorsement from me. But again, somebody like that has gone through athletic training, understands like they're older, their bones and joints ache a lot more at that age. So, that's where we're targeting individuals as well, is in that route. So you can't really target a team in those perspectives. So we're kind of looking for like a lifetime sort of brand cohesion.
And as you think about this, so this started in professional sports, but now that NIL is encroached on college, the athletes, in most cases, have individual agent representation. A few universities have stepped up and created an umbrella system to protect the university and protect the athletes. So when you come there, they say, we'll help you with this process. We'll provide you guidance with this process. And of course, there's going to be a cut that comes back to them for managing the process. The downside is the individual loses, the opportunity for full decision making, but the upside is they have protection against that. I don't know if you remember, you probably know this more than anybody, Tony, but years ago, I think it was CVS that said, hey, we're going to start putting CBD products in the store, and I think
Yep.
they put them in 8 or 9 states, and we got all excited, and then what happened? It was they partnered with the wrong company, essentially.
Yeah,
and
basically,
got yanked out of the stores, and no one ever heard anything of it. And that's what everybody wants to avoid because that's bad press. And I asked that question earlier about the bad players that are out there, because you can do your part, but if one bad player creates a stir at one university, that's headlines to everybody, and that impacts you, despite how much you take the high road to do this.
I have more of a comment than I guess, a question. Being a producer, I've dealt with players themselves, and what I've found, at least with the players, on my end, they're not necessarily bringing the value that I would have thought, right? And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just that they might wear my brand on their shirt or something, but they're not doing anything to engage that they're following. And I don't know if it's something that I'm doing wrong on my end, if it's not conveyed to their agent or to them directly. I've had players come to me and fun times, but then nothing. It was basically their camp that kind of stores us away, and I'm literally a source. So I don't know where that engagement. I had a girl last night who destroyed her opponent She's one of our people, but you know, no offense to her, she just doesn't do anything to promote our brand because that's not what she does. So I guess when you talk about partnerships, there was a guy, I guess back in the 80s, he shoe company, went to Charles Barkley. Charles Barkley basically said, I want $2 million, and he's like, I don't got it. Reebok signed him. Well, that same guy went to Michael Jordan, offered him a piece, you know, and look what happened there. It was just a partnership, and I think that's kind of what it is, and that's what us, as producers and players themselves, and I've dealt with big names, huge names, and it's, you know, good times, just business never materialized for whatever reason. Maybe there's a way we can connect, I don't know, I don't know, comment is really what it is, so.
You're addressing this from a business perspective, that you have to carefully write a contract that has agreeable terms to both parties. Understand that athletes, for example, who have representation, their agents have what's called decks. And if you're going after someone who has a record of success already and has brand recognition, what comes in that deck is a higher price for minimal return, essentially, but you know, they'll put that little patch on their shirt or their hat. Or you can invest a lower amount of a partner sponsorship on a person that has not won anything yet, they're up and coming, and you take that gamble and chance that they will win. And you know, it's just like anything else when you go to Vegas, right? You're gonna put quarters in the machine, or you're gonna go over there behind the curtain and put $500 on each blackjack game. And your investment will equal your return or your loss. And this is a game, and individuals are well represented, and they've earned the right to have their brand represented that way. And I, for one, don't blame them at all. And I think this whole new NIL is going to open up the door for a lot of good things, and I'm sure some not so good things, and they're to be, you know, to be determined. Question?
Yes. I apologize. My name is Mikhail Harris. I'm the founder of Georgia Hemp Association, and I'm listening to the conversation, and we're at a new phase in this industry where we're basically using personalities or athletes or entertainers basically to get into our industry and start selling different types of products. And we do know that these athletes do have some type of familiarity where they bring because they're famous, they bring those type of individuals, at least to inform them on what we're doing. My thing to you guys, you know what I'm saying, to all you guys on the panel, first of all, we're talking about making impressions in our community. You know what I'm saying? Meaning that we're selling a product and that we're not, this is just not about money anymore. You know what I'm saying? You have some people who are really serious about this new stage of what we're talking about. So my thing is, what imprint, when you guys are looking for these athletes, are you looking to make in our community as far as bringing these individuals to the forefront and advertising them through products, but what kind of imprint are you guys also making our community when you're doing this, if that's clear?
Right, and I mean, I think it's something like when we spoke earlier, when we first started talking about the NIL, then we talked about the athlete and the company, them being right for each other. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's certain athletes that have been through certain things. There's certain company owners that their company has been through certain things, and they can agree on those things, and that athlete can market that company just as well as that company can market themselves because they align with some of the same things. They might come from a community that's affected most by systematic racism. They might come from a community that's drug infested or where they didn't have the financial opportunity to be able to capitalize on things like social equity opportunities, stuff like that. So I think there needs to be a strategic process, especially when it comes down to guys leaving high school, different from a guy graduating college, on if they're gonna be working with this modern medicine and we're trying to spread this knowledge the right way, the athlete has an ownership for themselves to learn enough about the product and the medicine so they can spread the right knowledge, So I think that's been a big difference, with the athlete representing the product, is he just representing the product and not understanding what that product stands for or what that company stands for. So if the athlete takes a more strategic approach and more conscious of, what he's representing, not just representing anything to get paid, and that's why I think the cannabis space, the CBD space, is going to be totally different because it's going to be more of a trusting thing. Like it's more of like, if I'm telling you about this product, it's not only because I believe in it, it's because it's helped me and my family, and I think it's going to help others, you know, so we don't run into like the CVS partnerships, you know, where the products are bad and it turns out to be just a terrible thing.
So you bring up a good point. I just want to interject real quick. We're talking about a two-way partnership. This also opens up the opportunity for a three-way partnership. So if the U, in this case Miami, because it means different things to different people, right?
Right.
But if the U recruits a guy who's from Detroit, and you create a partnership in Miami, will there be a third piece where they do something for the community of Detroit where that person came from? That would be goodwill, I think, on behalf of these NIL relationships, and that's just something I'm throwing out from the hip based on your comment, but I think it would go a long way to also then demonstrate to the universities like a sort of a safety net here that like we're really in this for the real reasons.
Right. And I think it'll help also the athletes stay on board with doing everything they need to do because now their community is going to support them, the product, and their new endeavor. You know.
Great, agree.
I got a question, actually. I didn't think about it until you talked about hemp. So I'm assuming an NIL deal could be done for industrial hemp. It's no cannabinoids. Is that, so in other words, if I made hemp products, if I had shirts, if I had things that were made out of hemp, and that's what my company did, could that be an NIL deal?
Theoretically, yes, and it would just simply come down to the decision makers at each institution. So if you're going to, I won't use any names, but if it's a faith-based institution, they probably still won't touch it with a 10-foot pole unless they're about ready to go bankrupt because for some reason they might reach out and do something. But you know, this is similar to the conversations we had the last 2 days about research. Why can't we do research with certain things? Because everybody still groups it somewhere along the line of marijuana. And they won't, you know, be the decision makers to let you do this. But in theory, you could, and it all comes back down to the magic word we said all weekend, education. You can educate the right people for the right reasons and make it a good relationship. Yes, you absolutely could. And I'm not saying that on behalf, I'm not a lawyer, right? I don't even play, I did play one on TV once, actually. But Tony, I just want to let you know, Dr. Newton back there, sent me a message that cited a 2021 study that says there are 125 cannabinoids.
Okay.
So y'all can debate that
up.
later.
By the way, you
That's
learned that
within
at
the
FSU,
range
right?
of crap ton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He learned crap ton at FSU, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure.
Dr. Steegman. I just want to jump in on that thing as well. I think the idea of like involving a community around an athlete, I think it just sort of comes back to making sure that that athlete has a story that can help educate. So if it's opioids or if it's anxiety, I mean, these are all things that are trending with younger people anyway. It's just not surfaced in any meaningful way. Like, I mean, we have mental health, like, you know, colors that people will put on their Instagram or whatever, but like, we don't actually have someone with impact that's a starting lineman for Alabama who's talking about how cannabis helped him get to the level that he is at, or she is at an athletic level that everyone looks up to athletes. So we ought to incorporate that in your sponsorship of cannabis because it is used for all these different things that have giant, you know, education pieces to them.
He rolled tide on you. He went there.
Two more comments. You mentioned goodwill, and I'm learning too, right? Because I think what we find in all industries, whether it's sports, whether it's doctors, whether it's us as growers, whether it's wherever we are, marketing, we talk about goodwill. I learned in marketing they have a term. It's called native marketing, which is the goodwill. It's getting the newspapers, I guess, to give you that free article about whatever you guys did in your community, what company-wise, player-wise. So we have to educate ourselves together and understand. I was with Coach today, and we were talking two different languages, but we came together, you know, and trying to figure out. We were talking the same thing, but it was just a different word that we use. So it's a lot of different slangs we're all using, correct? And then to go back with, you talk about the company, you talk about the shield, the NFL, right? The NFL is absolutely against this, so, well, at least I believe they are. And it's not necessarily the player. So you can't really go to the NFL or a team, and I think someone's from the NHL, like players, they only get tested really one time a year. I mean, and everyone kind of knows, like, all right, the defense is getting tested today, and that's all that's going to, I mean, how do I know this stuff? But in any event, NHL really doesn't care, like, as it comes down to if the player is becoming a bad player, taking drugs and known, then they start to enforce their drug rules. So it's not necessarily the player. You talk about going to the organizations. The NFL is not going to allow it yet. I believe Major League Baseball just allowed it, I think, and certainly NASCAR. But that's kind of the problem with going to the shield, if you will, and then go to the company, I guess, which would be the team, and then to the player. So that was kind of my comments. But again, it's us marketing, right? You know, a lot of companies in the CBD business, they do, if I could do what they did, forget about it. You know, they just know how to do marketing. So it's just more of a comment about the shields, and then also how marketing the native. I just learned that the other day. So
one of the things that we want to instill in developing this conference and growing it in the future is to be a body of ideas, to bring people together with different opinions. We can all agree to disagree. We can't do that in society in some places nowadays, but we have people here that you know, the cannabis is the magic pill. No matter what you give, it's going to fix everything. We have others that you've heard speak on panels that didn't necessarily agree with that, and then we have other people in the middle. It's situation specific, it's person, it's illness specific. There's a whole lot of things, but I want this to grow into something that is an idea maker. And maybe you heard it elsewhere. That's the first time I've heard it here, but I think that's a great way to support NILs and make them have another value that I've not seen talked about in all of my conversations with this, at least in the cannabis space, but in all spaces. It's just been a partnership with the business and the student athlete. But if you can have a third piece of that goes back into the community where they're coming from, I think that has really, really tremendous value. And so unless someone proves me otherwise, we're taking credit for starting that here, right? And I already got with trademark, Pat, whatever. Where are our lawyers? Michael, you're there. You got,
No.
I said it first, right? No, I'm just kidding. But I appreciate it. The second thing I want to do is we're very generous here with what we do is when you grab a microphone and we have panelists, we let you have opinions and statements, not just ask the question for the panelists. But I also think it's really important to keep it factual. So when we talk about, what we think the NHL does this, or we think Major League Baseball does that, we typically have people in the room that actually know what they do. And so it's important that we speak factually and we don't leave here with misinformation. That's really, really critical. I know we had at least 2 speakers this weekend that showed slides exactly what the policies are in the leagues. And I know in my experience in traveling around consulting, I still learn things that are happening within the leagues, within the teams, because they're in the ground, they're on the trenches, and I don't know that each day. And so most of us are watching TV and getting our news from ESPN and elsewhere, and it's not necessarily 100% factual. And we may never learn what's factual, because quite frankly, it's none of our business. Those are things that stay private between the players and the organizations and those caring for them.
I just wanted to add something really
Silence
quick.
after that.
Yeah. No, that was great. And I'm basically just kind of reiterating what was already shared. I think the value of what our conversation is today is the strategy, right? The strategy in sort of bridging these worlds with athletes and cannabis. And that comes down to, I think, wellness, right? That's what we're all here for, like you said, and really a holistic wellness perspective. And hopefully, again, we mentioned industrial hemp, meaning like grain and fiber, industrial hemp. So there's also that opportunity to create that bridge between cannabis and sports. And I know a lot of us here, again, we're focused on the wellness and the THC CBD side of things, but it's a holistic thing. And I think there's opportunities for all of us to also join in those industries. So with GroundUp, what we're looking to do is to hopefully, like you mentioned, where it's not fully legal. For example, like with the athlete Brandon McCoy, he's not currently in the league, so we can do what we need to do and we can show results and we can, document that process. But using hemp protein, for example, it's an amazing, complete all the essential amino acids, great balance, you know what I mean? And so there's an opportunity there. And then again, like we mentioned with it being the individual and the results that can be seen through that process and the wellness from an individual standpoint that ripples out to the community. So again, just re-emphasizing the strategy and the opportunities for organizations and businesses being at the stage we are today to make those partnerships so that it does have greater impact within communities and just generationally and just it's all about the strategy. Regional approaches, shared opportunities, and longer term vision. There's one more point I wanted to make. I'm trying to catch it. Yep, I think it's great.
Okay,
so
hold
I
that
just want to
thought.
thank
We
you
come
all.
back to-
I want to thank you all for being here, and I think it's been a great conversation. So I look
Thank you.
forward to how
Let
this
us know
all
if that
grows.
thought pops back in your mind. It's important for us to understand that as this industry is undergoing a change right before our eyes. I mean, it's literally happening in front of us, and we're in the middle of decision makings and changes that transparency is critical. Because many of the organizations, like I don't doubt for a second, they truly do want you to be healthy and be your best and perform because it's in their best interest. And at the end of the day, they have to run a business. But the truth of the matter is not every team, not every organization is factually knowledgeable in this area. And when I take a guy like Dr. Ferrari there, look, he comes with a bias. He's representing a company, so the guard is up, right? If you're a professional team or you're a reputable college team, you're getting calls and emails from every single company out there for you to use the latest and greatest of their whatever they have. And unfortunately, that's the angle you come with, no matter if you have the absolute best product and you're the smartest chemist in the world. You bring that's your baggage that you bring. And so we have to get people that be educated and trusting of others. And most importantly, that starts with the athletes, to get the athletes to open up and know who to talk to, who they can trust, because their trust has not usually been within the system. In this case, it was the only people in the system are testing me, and if I'm positive, they're not really on my side. They have to enforce a penalty. And that's also, by the way, it's been a problem with sports medicine in general when we talk about this, because sports medicine, this is a compliance issue. When you test somebody and see where they are, it starts in compliance. It's our job in sports medicine to look at the holistic picture of keeping this person healthy. So it requires a transformation of athletes to becoming more open and comfortable of asking people they work with that take care of the rest of all their health and saying, this is what I use, this is how I use it, and get some accurate advice to allow them to perform their best, and then also be, on the larger scale, a healthy individual. And you can talk about so that they have a healthy life down the road, but honestly, when your athletic lifespan is this long, you're most worried about how I can maximize that, and I'll figure out the rest later, unless I'm mistaken. I don't know. I haven't had that opportunity to even experience that short-term contract to know that, but
I would say that's true. I know that was true for me personally. I mean, I wanted to maximize, my abilities when I had them, and I wasn't really considering or worrying about the consequences after. And then when the consequences started to come to the forefront later on in my career, then I had to start being more aware of these things and start to figure out, what am I going to do? How am I going to manage life after? Because now since I've retired, it's something that I never thought that I would see, but I'm like, I've had two guys that I played with commit suicide. And it's just now trying to manage and have the ability to live a proper life after, because during that short period of time, you did try to maximize, your financial earning, and maximize your ability to be able to play football.
well, your story is amazing. You're a great ambassador, and kudos to you for being here and telling
I got something. Jordan,
okay.
here I am.
Jordan.
I know. I just think ultimately, we have an opportunity here because there's two topics between cannabis and sports. It's something that every single community in the world can relate to. I think I've been to multiple institutions. I think everyone had a little cannabis on campus here and there, wherever you went to college, at what some party, some entity, somewhere you went. I just think this is a great opportunity to bridge communities. And our main focus here at GroundUp is build your community. So we're using the athletes. I heard you mention earlier about sponsorships. Right now, what we're doing, what I've been doing, what my team has been doing, we've been taking a pool say taking $100,000. I might have a kid at San Diego State right now. I'm taking $100,000, putting it up for him, his family, from education wise to all the different entities that's going to need for his tenure in the league and so on and so forth. Because I mean, ultimately, the game is played off the court. They're there for 2 hours, but you have 22 left hours in the day. So I just think right now it's just about bridging the communities for the educational wise. Some people might not know how this person feels, and someone might not know how this person feels, but it's all the same thing. Sports is in every household. It divides us, it unifies us, and cannabis has brought me a lot of friends. So I just think ultimately we need to take that and use this as an opportunity to bridge the gaps in every community so that a doctor, a lawyer, all these different people who wouldn't probably meet an athlete at 12, 13, 17, or not understand his plight, or not understand his stress, can understand the research that a doctor has done for the past 10 years, 5 years, and so on and so forth. And so these businesses who's ultimately trying to find the right athlete, the right client, the right partner, to ultimately help them distribute their product. We got to understand that the athlete is a product and the community is a product, because the plan is to take the percentage of the earnings from each athlete that the community has put behind it to invoke more opportunities in the community as far as providing jobs, et cetera, not just go and throw a party, not just go and throw an event, but ultimately making the community turn and provide skilled jobs and different opportunities for everyone to eat off this same entity that someone might have put $500 up, someone might have put $50,000 up, someone might put $2,000 up, but ultimately it funds the community. And I think that's the biggest thing about, from what I've heard from everyone's different aspect of things. Some businessman might not understand how he can get in contact with a young athlete, or an athlete might not know a doctor. You know what I mean? You might not see a doctor till you get to college. You know what I mean? You might not even see someone unless they just come and give a physical at high school or different things like that. So, I mean, it's just really about bridging the gaps, and it's just a way of life. I think everything is a way of life. I think wellness is a way of life. I think the community has a way of life of doing things in every community. And I think ultimately when we bridge this gap, because I think cannabis brings the world together, and sports, as we can see, fills up hundreds of thousands. That's how they're able to give these athletes $200 million. So I think overall, that's the mission. It's building a community, building people up together, and ultimately just educating each other so everything is not so taboo as marijuana has been for the past years, and so on and so forth. So I just think that's what it's about. And I think it's just a wonderful conversation. Yeah.
I'm going to use that as your closing statement. I'm going to ask each of the panelists if you could just maybe take 1 minute as our time is running down to just maybe summarize your thoughts. Start with Ron on the end.
My wife and I were shopping just yesterday, celebrating our anniversary, and we walked by a store called Forever 21, and she said, it should be called Someday 53. And so when you look at these athletes, I think about Someday 53, because I can't help but wait until the NFL actually changes their policy, not a wink and a nod, but out there actually endorsing this. And I think when they realize their athlete that they pay $27 million a year can recover quickly and can be back on that field quicker than they would have been before, that is a major game changer. And the other thing, I hate to say it, but if they realize they're going to be sued in the future for all of these brain injuries that they may not as much be sued for if they allowed this policy to change, I'm hopeful that those two selfish ideas for owners would be what it would take to actually make this change. So again, thank you all for putting this on. It's been an honor to be here today. I look forward to watching the incremental changes of the leagues as we move forward.
Tony?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of pondering on some of these thoughts as they're coming up in the conversation, but I was just thinking about like what we're up against in the cannabis space, and opioids being the main forefront with athletic populations, and the way that they infiltrated the league, right, wasn't through marketing or sponsoring players. It was through like billions of dollars of corporate lobbying and brainwashing physicians, teaching them in medical school that this was the only option. So to Jeff's point, conversations and conferences like this, they have to start and they have to like grow. And everyone that's here has to be sort of responsible to like pass on that conversation to future people so that this can become, you know, a grassroots movement that starts from the inside out through education. Like if you're up against an opioid, you just basically, you know, we outperform opioids. So science and the truth and experience is gonna, you know, be the most valuable asset for us. And the opioid industry is, you know, they're crumbling as we see them lose all their billion-dollar lawsuits, go to jail and all this stuff. So I think we just have to understand that's what we're competing up against. And it's gonna take a little bit to overthrow that, but over time, the truth and science wins, so.
Mike James, take us home.
Yeah, I mean, we just all have a responsibility to each other, to the plant, to sport, trying to propel ourselves and move ourselves in the best, oh, did my mic cut off? Oh. In the best direction. So a lot of great things were said today. Ron, you made a great point just about someday being 53. And all of us, you know, while we're here, maximizing our time on this earth to help others and to push things forward where we know is right. So, I mean, today has been great. I think sport is going to continue to be a microcosm, you know, of the world, and you can look at it and hopefully it creates the best change, and hopefully I can be a part of that and everybody here today. So,
thank you. And then just in closing, I just want to throw out a couple of thank yous. Thanks to all of you for attending and believing in us in this inaugural conference and supporting, being a part of it, offering your ideas and sharing with us where you are in this space. Thanks to all of those that have come here as speakers and panelists and again offer your expertise. To our staff, wave, thanks for helping. Not you all in the back, there you go. AV guys, the best guys in the business. I don't see all of us here, but Gene Jones, he is the true brainchild behind this and person who organizes some of the best conferences that I've ever been to, and it's been a pleasure to partner with you, and I thank you as well for your support and belief in me, and we look forward to seeing you all in the future and making a difference in a positive direction. So thank you and safe travels. Thanks, guys. Good job. Appreciate it.